Today's guest is Dave Glaza, founder and CEO of Digits, a Minneapolis-based retail media consultancy that's been growing for the last 10 years. Dave is a former Target leader, a retail media expert, and someone who's helped over 75 alcohol brands navigate everything from Target Circle to omni-channel strategy. Dave shares insights from Digits' journey, how they became one of the fastest growing agencies in the country, why staying niche has been their strength, and what he's thinking about when it comes to AI and the future of agency work. Let's get into it.
So Danielle, it's mid-January. It's halfway through January, which is really no big deal to most people. But if you're doing dry January, it's a big deal. Like you've made it. Yeah. It's halfway through, right? So how is your dry January going?
Well, I have to admit, I didn't start right away on January 1st or 2nd. I think this is my first week. So to me, I don't feel like I'm at the midpoint. So I'll have to go into February. But it's been good. The thing that I notice as soon as you start with dry January is that your sleep is poor. Am I the only one, or has that happened to you?
That's supposed to be one of the benefits of not drinking.
That's what I thought. And then all of a sudden it feels like I'm not falling asleep as easy, and I'm like halfway sleeping in the middle of the night.
I think those first 2 weeks is a little bit of a transition. So this is like my 5th year, I guess, of doing a dry January. And actually last January, it ended up being like dry like 5 or 6 months. Like I didn't drink until June. But I notice there's the sleep thing that goes on in the beginning. There's the cravings, more sugar. It's different for everybody because, are you somebody that typically drinks, 3-4 drinks a day or 2 drinks a week? It just depends on what you're
Are you my doctor?
Transitioning. Yeah. Well, and now you've got guidelines that are the new guidelines, right? What was it? They said Americans are drinking less than any time since 1939. So really? Drinking's way down in general. And I know there's 20-ish younger, kids that don't drink. It's just not part of what they do. And then you've got the U.S. dietary guidelines that were recently updated. They've shifted away from this specific daily limits of I think it was 1 drink per day for women, up to 2 drinks a day for men. But now it's just saying less is better. And it's just urging people to consume less alcohol for better health. So it's just becoming less and less of a concern or an issue, it seems like. But what'll be interesting is, what does that mean for the alcohol brands, all these breweries, that are out there. And you see some of them struggling and closing, and it's a mix of things that are happening. But our guest today happens to be pretty knowledgeable when it comes to marketing alcohol brands. So I'm kind of excited to get his take on it. So with that, I'm going to just do a quick intro and we'll pull him on camera. But today's guest is Dave Glaza. He's the founder and CEO of Digits, a leading retail media consultancy based here in Minneapolis. Dave's a former Target leader with deep expertise in Target Roundel, Target Circle, omni-channel retail media strategy. Dave and his team is celebrating 10 years of helping CPG brands navigate the fast-changing world of retail media, loyalty, and performance marketing. Dave's known for his sharp perspective on where retail media is headed, his annual predictions for Target and the industry, and his ability to translate complex platform changes into real practical growth strategies for brands. So welcome, Dave.
Hey.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So real quick, what's your whole take on this dry January? Are you in the middle of it as well?
I am not a participant. So I would say I've heard of this term, and actually was in one of my predictions, was zebra striping, which essentially it means some days you drink, some days you don't, or maybe you start at a dinner and you order a beer, and then when you finish the beer, and the waiter asks for another one, you say, no, thanks, I'll have a Diet Coke or whatever, right? Like you going back and forth between it. I'd say I would characterize myself maybe for January, or else the other term that I heard and liked is called damp January.
Yeah.
It's not dry, but it's also not wet. It's just damp.
And have you heard the term California sober?
I have heard that one as well. So that one is a new age term.
Right. That's like no alcohol, but I'm gonna step things up in the THC realm.
Correct, which is that's its own growing area space as well. So yep, that one's new.
Absolutely. When it comes to here's a good question. So during, if you have a choice for an NA beverage, what's it going to be? What do you go to? Do you have a favorite NA beer, or do you do these alternative spirit like NA drinks?
I mean, I'll answer the question truthfully, is coffee.
There you go.
Which I'm not sure that that's a replacement, but I pretty much drink three things: coffee, water, and beer. That's about it.
Yeah, there you go. How about you, Danielle? What's your favorite? What's your go-to for an NA alternative?
I just like a seltzer, or I'll just do tonic water. That's what I've been reaching for every night.
Yeah, I mean, we go through, LaCroix, sponsored by LaCroix today.
Yes.
A lot of LaCroix, but I do like NA beers have gotten really good.
Yes.
Like within the last couple of years, 3 years, whatever. There's one called Best Day, and I would highly recommend it. But that's a good one.
I will, like, this is probably the functional answer, is I do enjoy a hop water. And so
those are
actual
good.
brand, like HOPWTR, I believe. They have like a grapefruit brand. And so I'll have some of that around. And so that could be a afternoon or an evening if I'm truly trying to replace the beer. So
Yep. There you go. So tell me, maybe along those lines, I know that alcohol and the bev alc industry is big for you guys in terms of helping these brands navigate what's going on right now. With this new announcement and the guidelines, and what are you seeing amongst that industry in terms of best practices and pivots that they're having to make in order to stay relevant and keep their sales up?
yeah, the elk industry right now has had a tough couple of years. The at-home business, spiked during COVID. And ever since then, it's just sort of been a recalibration of where people are buying their drinks, right? So yes, people are drinking less to your numbers, but also year over year versus COVID, they're drinking out more than they did for that year, at least, if you will. And so the recalibration of where you're drinking is different. So as an agency that mostly helps alcohol brands sell products through retailers, it's only a piece of the pie. So as it pertains specifically to non-alc, that's one of the biggest growing segments. It's still relatively small from a pure dollar share of the businesses, but it's by far growing fast. And so I'd say your forward-thinking breweries and alc companies are definitely building catalogs in that space. Because if it keeps growing at the percentage it's growing now, it'll be a meaningful number and it'll be a must part of their assortment in a couple of years.
Yeah, your recent blog went in depth on this, and it talks a little bit about the two tracks that alcohol brands need to be on. They should be producing NA alternatives as well as their regular brands, because people are purchasing both. They're not purchasing one or the other, right?
Yeah, it goes back to that, even that zebra striping type term of, if people are going to be switching back and forth between elk and non-elk, how are you selling them both? Right. So Lagunitas does a really good job. They have Lagunitas hop water, and then they have obviously all their regular Lagunitas beers. And so they launched hop water. I heard about it 5 years ago, so maybe it was even longer, but like they've been longer into that space. And so you see a lot of startups in that space. And my assumption is over time, you'll have some of the big boys start to acquire those guys to kind of like bring those brands into their portfolio. But yeah, there's a lot of upside right now in sort of that small, growing, changing business.
It seems like every time I go to the liquor store, there's something new, and I like get overwhelmed because you find a brand that you like, and then the next time you go, it's not even there anymore, because it seems like the inventory is changing just constantly. Is there a trend that you're seeing if you have to stay relevant in the NA space and in the alcohol space, and there's this constant movement of new products, like how do you even compete?
Yeah, I think it's about a master brand. Back in its craft beer heyday, right, there was essentially a new IPA from the same brewery that'd just be on a rotation, right? And so most craft beer drinkers were like, oh, I got the new one. I got to try it. Every time we go to a liquor store, Black Stack or Surly or whomever came out with their most recent version. And that was kind of how you drove sales. Shelf space for that has kind of reduced. And I think now a lot of that's moved to THC. And so people are innovating in that space. So, I think you're still going to run into the problem where as a shopper, it's constant change. There's just a lot of seasonals, because it is what drives a lot of the purchases, is the interest in newness and sort of the Pokemon treasure hunting type approach of trying new stuff. So we'll have to see where it settles in right now. Because it is a lot of newness.
Well, we're all from Minnesota, and John and I had this conversation previously, but there's no dry July because
Right.
we're at the lake.
It's, it's tough making it past May, June. That's really tough. Yeah.
Well, I think I saw one of my favorite breweries is actually out of Massachusetts, but it's a place called Treehouse, one of the original sort of like hazy IPAs. And they just launched what they called January Julius. Julius is their famous flagship beer. So that would be sort of like Surly launching something called January Furious, right? So it's a 2.5% alcohol versus their normal IPA is 7%, let's say. But they specifically called it, a January version of it, which I thought was interesting marketing. And it kind of goes down this whole path of moderation of sorts. But I would drink a light Furious, maybe out on the lake, because it's hard to stomach a huge IPA at 2 in the afternoon on a sunny 4th of July. But maybe they have a light version.
Yeah, there's those all day IPAs and things like that are, 3%, 4%, whatever. But yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate going down that path a little bit. Let's step back and let everybody know a little bit more about what Digits is in particular. And then I'd love to just dive into your journey and how you got here. So first off, tell us what Digits is, what you guys do, where you're headed.
Yeah, Digits, we are a independent retail media agency. So we sit between retailers and brands, helping them essentially market their products through retail better. So retail media as a industry was born, depending how you define it, somewhere about 7 years ago. And so I'd say we've been pioneers in that space. And have really continued to build boutique services of how to help brands leverage and sell more product through the doors. So for us, that's omni-channel. So primarily your Targets, your Walmarts, your Krogers, your Best Buys, your H-E-Bs, whichever omni-channel places that people are selling product. So that's what we do as a kind of function. We've got 3 main client sets. We already talked a lot about alcohol on the call here. Alcohol is a big client of ours. We work with about 75 different alcohol brands and helping them bring retail media to life. And that's a very kind of odd retail media space. It's very new and specialized. We also work a ton with brands around Target. So myself and a lot of my team are former Target. And then we operate a third vertical, which we call our Digits RMN, or Digits Retail Media Network itself. So we aggregate multiple regional grocers and bring processes and operations for them to help them build services in this retail media timeframe.
So what is it that differentiates Digits from other retail media agencies? What do you think your strongest asset is?
Yeah, too. I mean, there's not a ton of retail media agencies is what I would say. And so we're differentiated even off the top because there's a lot of, I'd say, full funnel media agencies who operate maybe have an RMN person or an RMN team. And so we have found that those more international type media companies don't truly understand retail media, where, that's all we do. And so we understand whether from paid search to on-site to off-site, whatnot, we are full 2 feet deep into retail media. So that's our first differentiator. Second would be our deep knowledge on Target. So there's a lot of clients that we work with that have great Target businesses that we just support them there because we're the smartest Target folks in town on retail media. And then third is the ALC. So alcohol is, again, it didn't exist in retail media. It's probably about 5 years behind core grocery in retail media. And so there's not a lot of agencies that have planted a flag there either. And so that's our specialty there, helping brands really figure out that space.
And then do you have any proprietary tech or process or strategies that, like with paid, I know we talked before about paid on site, like helping brands with paid search within the Amazons, the Walmarts, the Targets.
Yeah, for Target, our proprietary tech, there would be some of our analytics around promotions. So a ton of history as Digits with their Cartwheel and Circle platform. So we have a dedicated Target Circle promotional engine that we work with. And that's a lot of our large CPG clients leverage that because Target's promotional tactics are quite a bit different than Walmart's and other grocery stores. And so that's sort of a proprietary method for us to work with some of your biggest CPGs in the business.
So can you just, for somebody listening, mainly me, so this is how you show up on the app and also how you compete on the shelf, or is it just mainly like the online presence in these retailers?
Yeah, for digits, we're digital. So we are in-app paid search and display, in-app promotions, which is largely coupons, or if you're Minneapolis folks here, your Target Circle promotions. And then it's your off-site media as well. So off-site could be ads in, run a house programmatic, whether that shows up in an app, a weather app, a game or whatnot, and then also social in that space. So, but it's very bottoms up for us, I would say. So everything is run around a retailer sphere of influence. So if you ask us to help your Target business, then you're maybe doing off-site media, but we're only talking to people that shop Target. If somebody lives next to a Target store and has been in a Target store in the last month, then we're talking to them off-site. But if they've never shopped a Target store in their life, why waste your money on them? So
Right.
we're not running media against them for you. So even if it's off-site, it's only against a addressable Target shopper type audience. And then we replicate that out whatever retailer we're working at. So whether it's Target, Walmart, Kroger, whatnot.
Perfect. That's really interesting. And I'm sure you didn't just come up with this. So I think if we could go back to how did you get into marketing? Where did your journey start?
Yeah, I was born and raised in retail, meaning I started at Target when I was 20. So that's born and raised. So I worked at Target on the merchant side. So I was a merchant for about 10 years at Target, bounced around from different departments as Target has you do. So that's video games to candy to bedding to just kind of core grocery. And so learned a lot about how to try to sell just more product out the door. And then I got into marketing where Target was building out Cartwheel, which is its coupon platform. And they realized they needed a merchant to learn how to talk to vendors and talk to shoppers and whatnot. So I got pulled over to that and helped to lead out its launch. And so that was probably my first true marketing job. Sometimes merchants call themselves marketers, but I think that's a pretty unique type of marketing. And so I'd say my move over to Cartwheel was definitely, 2 feet into the marketing world, and learned a lot about digital marketing, early days Target Roundel, early days, before people called it retail media. It was like digital vendor marketing or co-op marketing, other terms we used to use before I think it kind of got branded as retail media.
Why did they choose you out of all of the people?
I don't know. Go back and ask Casey, Carl, and Bonnie. That's what I would say. But I mean, for me personally, the way Target works, right? You're sort of moving up. You're in a pool of people that I'd say are kind of ready for that next role. And for whatever reason, I was working under Casey Carl at the time. He was head of all hard lines and he was also head of digital. And so this job stayed under Casey. And he must have thought I had the right mix of skills to get pulled over for this. And so, yeah, I don't know why they chose me, but I'm happy they did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you always know you were going to be in retail, or what were you thinking in, when you were 15 or something? Where was your head?
I mean, I was young. I fancied myself a business person is what I would say. So whatever that meant, that or a chef. I really wanted to be a chef probably when I was like 10 or 12. And then I realized they had to work nights and weekends and I didn't want that. So,
right.
But no, not retail. I mean, I was fortunate enough to apply and get the internship at Target during college, like headquarters internship. And I liked the company. I liked het downtown. I sort of liked it then and, fortunate enough to come back and work full time out of school.
What'd you major in college?
Yeah, marketing.
There you go. Yep.
Yeah.
I love that. You majored in marketing. Didn't think you would go into marketing, right? Went to go be a merchant, then got back. That's probably why you got that job.
Could be. No.
Who has some marketing experience. And everything, I have friends who have quit retail because they complain that they have to work nights and weekends and Black Friday. So that's funny to me too.
Yeah, headquarters a little less. You do Black Friday, we used to have to log on, right? And so like pre-ecom days, I think there was more, but we could at least work remote those days. But it was tough. I'd say that between Christmas and New Year's wasn't just like you can log off, during retail, because you're needed at least decision-making and problem solving and whatnot, depending what job you're in, I would say. When I was on the video game team, that was a real like day-to-day, week-to-week type business versus some others are a little bit more long lead timed. You know, you're not solving the world's problems in one day type situation.
So you were in this role for a while, right? It sounds like you moved up the ranks at Target. How long were you there and why did you transition?
Yeah, I ended up being there 14 years. For me, I guess I transitioned. I was just ready to not work in corporate jobs anymore. So, and probably not too dissimilar from anybody else that's worked over a decade at, a big corporate job. Was just ready to try something else. I think I had been successful at Target building a couple of different businesses and was ready to try to do that myself. So, if you're building businesses within a corporation, recognition, compensation, building blocks from a career don't always flow. It's hard, right? It's a huge company, lots of people, a lot of people doing really good things, and you're constantly rotating. I thought in an opportunity in sort of this digital grocery retail media space, who knows more about it than I did at that point in time, because it was a pretty new business, and let's leave, let's give this thing a shot. And worst I can do is have to go back to corporate America 6 or 12 months from now. So that's why the switch.
Who was your first client like, and how did you pitch them on that?
First client. We have 2. I'd have to go back and check, but I will call out Jody Wing. So Jody Wing was one of our first advocates. So she's a former Target person. When I left, she was very happy to sort of like take a phone call, right? And like hired me in specifically, it was just me at the time, to help drive digital and Cartwheel at the time there. So she's over at Cerebelly now, actually baby food. So if you need some premium, like brain healthy baby food, that is where she's at today. But she was one of our first advocates. And I think the first person that signed a contract.
So you've been at it 10 years. You've built up a team. And you said it's made up of mostly Target folks. You hit the Inc. 5,000 fastest growing agencies in the country in 2024. What gets you excited about the next phase of Digits, the next 5 years? What's that look like?
Yeah, I mean, what gets me excited, and I think what I've come to embrace is just being a team that I'd say is really good at something. And meaning like we're pretty niche, we're pretty specialized. Like I said, we're only retail media. We're not a company that's going to build you a branding strategy or an entire social strategy, right? Like our job is to help you sell more product out the door, right? And increase returns and just become, a bigger brand. And so I guess what gets me excited is just continuing to find ways to be the best at what we do. I think that's maybe kind of a generic answer, but I take a lot of pride in running a company that's really good at what we do. And if we got to a point where we couldn't be really good at it, then obviously that would be sad and not would get me excited.
The retail industry, similar to marketing in general, there's just a lot of innovation going on. It's fast moving. You're always learning. You've got players like Amazon doing, big things like launching 250,000 square foot superstore in Chicago that could be very disruptive to the whole thing. I'd love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, the store. I mean, so Amazon's been playing around with physical retail for a while. I mean, they bought Whole Foods a numbers of years ago. That's been a mid success, or almost in some ways a nothing burger, really. If you look at it, like it hasn't changed a lot. Like it hasn't failed, but certainly hasn't changed the grocery industry a ton. So I think they're still trying to find the right way to win physical sales. The stores they've done before, they've done the 4-star, which is just sort of like a walkout type experience of literally anything with 4 stars in their store. It was more like a sharper image. That was interesting, but they had 5 or 10 of those and shut that down. They've had Amazon Fresh stores, which is closer to this, but they're a lot smaller stores. And so this will be their first swing at a first large retailer, like the size of a Kroger or a Walmart. And details are sparse, but it'll be interesting to see how they pair, that physical shopping experience up with local delivery. So they've also recently opened up local delivery. I know now personally, whenever I do an Amazon order, there'll be a little pop-up at the end that'll say, would you like to add any groceries? Right? And it's like bananas and tomatoes and whatever. It's fresh stuff. And so I don't know how they're going to infuse that with the store, but they're already building real estate and infrastructure to do the digital delivery. What would it look like for them to do, in-store shopping? So yeah, we'll have to keep our eyes peeled.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that comes to my mind is if you want to be in Target, you have to go through so many hoops and then hire an agency or somebody like yourself to help manage the visibility then on online and in this or to support their in-store presence, right? And then like there's just all of these things. And with Amazon, anybody can just log in and start selling a product. So it'll be interesting to see what is in their store and how do they select the inventory. Do you have any thoughts?
Well, I think my thoughts are similar to yours, in that it's a whole different swim lane, right? And digitally, it's easy to get in and out of product as an Amazon, right? They don't own the inventory for a lot of this stuff. They don't own the assortment selection, but physically trucking product to a store and then being responsible and owning for it when it's there, it's a very different swim lane. And so building up merchandising capabilities will be new for them. And I'm sure that's why they're piloting it. But if you fast forward to a world where they had 3,000 stores like Walmart, they would need a whole new team, whole new processes. And there's been discussion of like, would they acquire somebody else, right? Are they really going to try to build it themselves, or is this a test? And then they'll go out and acquire a grocery store or a big box store or whatnot. So yeah, well, they've historically not been great at physical retail. So yeah, are they able to switch it and be good?
So they have something to prove.
Yeah, I mean, well, they've already proven a lot, but maybe not in physical retail.
So you talked a little bit about your work with regional grocers. Maybe tell us a little bit more about that. And then I've also picked up on you're doing more in the C-store, the convenience store area as well. So what does that look like in the next couple of years?
Yeah, our regional grocer work got started a number of years after I founded Digits, because some good friends in work contexts went to regional grocers and they started building loyalty programs and media, and they're reading articles around Walmart Connect and Target Roundel, generating hundreds of millions and billions of dollars, and reaching out to us and saying, hey, my team wants to build this, but we don't have anybody that's done this before, right? And it's hard to hire talent, and we don't know if we want to invest in a director or whatnot, right? So we got plugged in, and our role now is we essentially act as agency of record for a number of regional grocers. They do the same things that like a Roundel or a Walmart Connect does, but obviously on a smaller scale, just because their business is smaller. But trying to provide on-site paid search, off-site programming, coupons, whatnot, all of those things. So Digits leads that strategy from a capability development, and then we lead the sales and operations with CPGs as well. So really full support on the service side. And then I'd say we have tech friends. And so if a regional grocer is either has a solution already, we help them out, manage it, sell it, improve it. Or if they're building from scratch, then we have a kind of a preferred suite of tech partners that we can bring in to kind of support some of these things with them.
Great. And is that something that's going to carry over into these smaller convenience stores as well, the same type of services?
Yeah, similar. So C stores are 5 to 10 years behind, I'd say, from a retail media capabilities. And a lot of that struggle is they just don't have a ton of digital traffic. So some of the leading C-store apps are like Casey's has a good app because honestly, they sell a lot of pizzas. People have their app and they order pizza through the app.
That pizza.
Yeah, I have learned through conferences that they're like a top 5 pizza chain in America, which I think you wouldn't have known, right? A grocery store or convenience store is that. But retail media historically is monetization of digital traffic, and C-stores, maybe 1% of their business is done digitally. So you have to be creative and monetize and influence through other ways. So that's in-store screens, in-store radio, talkers, can be at pump if we're talking an actual gas station C-store. So the tactics that you do to influence business it's a different flywheel than I'd say what your Kroger does. So we as Digits have had to adjust to that. And C-stores themselves, I'd say, are trying to figure out what their winning recipe is, because they don't sell the same stuff, right? It could be gas. It can be convenience products. Some of them are half a restaurant as well, right? Not just pizza, but hot dogs and fried chicken and whatnot that are all coming out of these places. And so the retail media flywheel is different than grocery. But yeah, Digits is starting on that work about a year ago and now continuing to grow that out with some of our C-store partners.
And I'll only go to the gas station with and that's not always a C-store, but like the gas station that's on Upside with the best deal. So it's like, first you have to get them there, and then you have to get them to get the app.
Yeah, a lot of the business needs that we talk to brands is so many people are just buying gas. How do we get them to come inside and buy a candy or a drink or a bag of chips or whatever, right? Like that's a big part of the use case of C-store retail media, at least the gas stations ones, is, converting people from the pump to come inside. So, and that's quite a bit different, rural versus urban. There's a lot of segmentation there of how those are different. Yeah, I grew up in a smaller town in Wisconsin, and we didn't have a grocery store, right? We had a Quick Trip. So Quick Trip was our grocery store, right? You can get your potatoes and onions and eggs and milk and whatever there. And if you need to go to a real grocery store, then you had to drive 30 minutes and you go to the real grocery store. And so the role of a C-store is different by community. And so how to build retail media around that, I think, has been a lot of stop and starts, but it'll be an industry with a ton of growth over the next 5-10 years. And so it's starting now.
Interesting. What advice would you give to a small CPG brand that's just starting out?
In C-stores or anywhere?
Just anywhere.
Just in general, yeah.
Most of them, it starts with the money. And so meaning in this day and age of brands, you have to have money to talk about your product, right? Which I guess isn't a big surprise, but I think for people that are trying to get into big box stores, there used to be this belief of, oh my God, Target's going to carry me in 500 stores. Now I've made it and I'm going to be the next big thing. And then we're going to get acquired and, be rich, whatever. I don't know, like that. I'm making that up and making it easy, but like the hard part was getting the buyer to say yes and getting in the stores. I would say now there's a ton of new products to get on the shelf. The good brands have a percentage of their P&L dedicated to marketing, right? Maybe they're used to Amazon, or maybe they're more new age. So they're dedicating 10, 20% of their budgets to actual retail media. Others are coming in, they'll talk to us and they'll want to do stuff and they'll say, well, we don't have any money. And I'm like, well, that's not good, right? Because you can't just put your product on the bottom shelf and hope all these Target shoppers are going to walk by and see yours and be like, oh my God, that brand new product, it wasn't there last time. Let me pick it up and read the packaging. That doesn't really work. And so biggest advice would be have a marketing budget and find somebody that's good at helping you spend it. So either that's internal, great. If you have a team internal, do that, hire your own team, get on paid search, manage it yourself. If you can't do it yourself, then don't be scared to hire an agency like us or somebody else. So that would be the advice.
I hear that a lot, actually. Just like, oh, actually, we have no money. You're like, how did you just find that out? I don't know. But conversations we've had, yes, I hear that.
Often I'll leave like a people will reach out to us and say, hey, we found you. We're interested in running paid search. And, I'll leave those conversations with, just make sure you do something. Like, even if for some reason you don't like working with us, if our fees aren't right, or if you think that we're not the right fit, that's fine. But don't call me in 4 months and say we didn't do anything and my product's not selling. Like, get doing something. And, I think that's where you got to leave it and take it.
Honestly, that's probably true for any brand right now. It seems like there are very few brands that are able to get away with not paying to play. But right now, it just seems like ad costs are up across the board. And to be visible, you do have to pay for that visibility. I don't know if that will ever change, but it's getting harder to break through and be noticed.
Agreed.
So as a successful agency owner, is there anything along the way that happened that you'd be willing to share in terms of lessons or turning points, or maybe some failures or struggles that, you learned something along the way?
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely a learning or a turning point. And so, I shared that I left to start Digits. When I did, it was just me, right? So it was just me, and my mission was to provide service and replace my salary. Right? Like, that was all I really cared about at first, was if I can replace my salary. And then, it started to work. And so I needed support and built, and fast forward 10 years later, here we are. But I'd say there was a turning point, maybe a couple of years in, once we actually were like a little bit stable, that at least I had this realization that part of my job as an entrepreneur business owner was to provide a place that people wanted to work at. Like that seems simple now, but I don't there was a light bulb moment for me when I was like, my team's taking vacations. My team has extra money. Right? One of my team members' spouse stopped working, right? That I'm like building an environment where people want to be and they enjoy their life and, a flexible environment is something that I'd say probably about halfway through. I was like, oh, this is now part of my vision of what I want to do as a business owner. That it's not why I started Digits. I started Digits just to sort of make a job for myself and build something. And then I kind of had that turning point maybe halfway through. And now it's definitely part of me as an owner of how I want to run the company is to very much stick to sort of those ethos.
And how many people do you have in the agency now?
We have about 20 on the payroll on a month-to-month basis. So still independent, still sort of boutique, which I like. 20. It's a good number. It's big enough that it's consistent sort of week to week, month to month, but it's not so big that, I'm still involved in most things and most people. And so I'm really able to kind of still keep myself in the business.
We talk a little bit about AI because it's important, and I'm curious how much that's affecting your day-to-day.
So it's something I'm sort of personally passionate about of, we're a Google house, right? How are we using Gemini? How are we using flows? How are we automating our work? I think of it, a little bit of staying relevant. So we spent some time on this talking about it's our 10-year birthday, right? And so 10 years ago when we launched, we were the smart young ones that knew everything about, honestly, Target, Cartwheel, and retail media at the time. So I would imagine if I was launching Digits today, that we would be launching as an AI first agency. And what does that mean? I don't even know exactly what that means, but everything with AI, all of our reporting, all of our data, everything would be sort of built and backed up and managed by AI. Even as only a 20-person agency, trying to revamp everything we do and make everything AI is just harder to go backwards and rebuild than it is to start fresh, right? And so that's probably how I think of it as owner is how do we take on those practices so that we're staying fresh with, me 10 years ago who's launching an agency now, right? And are they going to leapfrog us from a specialty point of view and be able to be better at some of the things that we can be if we don't use, the newest tools? So that's how I think about it. That's how I talk to my team about it. And it changes every week, I would say, and what you can do. So it's not a set it and forget it type strategy, but we're definitely trying to stay at the forefront of how we as an agency can use those tools for our clients.
How about AI from a retail perspective? You've got the ability to now shop inside of ChatGPT potentially. And how is that going to impact your business and your service offerings?
I think it's all under the same bucket of how do you influence purchase decisions, right? And so when I started Digits, the only place we cared about was inside the Target app, right? We talked a lot about Cartwheel. And then it became, paid search is where we influence decisions. And then it's offsite was where we influence decisions. And so I think that would just be another spoke on the flywheel. I think today, there's not a ton of paid tools. It's mostly organic. It's through content. It's through other ways, right, that you can help influence the LLMs. But there's a ton of money in retail media. So I'm sure those LLMs will start finding ways to tap into those buckets of money. And that's where I'd say firms like ours need to be first in, how are we running paid search in ChatGPT or whatever the functionality ends up being is where our team will lead in and try to be a leading agency in that space for brands.
Dave, that was really interesting. Just curious, if you weren't doing marketing, would you still be at Target or would you be doing something else? If marketing didn't work out for you, what path would you have chosen? Chef? Was that it?
Well, chef was what 10-year-old me wanted to do. Yes. I do still like cooking, but I don't think I wouldn't want to do that now. I'd say two things. One is I would love to be a sports podcaster. I would start either Green Bay Packers or Wisconsin Badgers or whatnot. That's my crew. And so sports podcasting would be definitely something I would enjoy doing. Or there was a time in my life that I got super into craft woodworking. So there was probably about 6 months before I left Target to do Digits that I had actually written up a business plan to start a woodworking shop. More of you've seen these ones Board and Brush or whatever. They have these little shops where you can do classes and whatnot. And that was a big trend 10, 15 years ago. And so I was interested in maybe doing that. So anyways, it would be some sort of woodwork. I like to consider, I called myself like a 90-degree or maybe more like a Pottery Barn type woodworker. So it's a lot of straight cuts, a lot of big cuts and gluing and screwing, not a ton of intricate stuff. That's more where I'm at. Yeah. I built a bed. I built a hutch, some stuff like that.
Functional stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah. I'd like make some things. There was a couple of years where that was a good outlet for me. So that's good.
Nice.
Cool. Another fun thing that we like to ask and do on our podcast of our guests is, who's someone out there that you admire that's doing a lot of good marketing work right now that maybe isn't getting the recognition that they should or deserve? But just curious if you've got somebody in mind that you'd like to lift up.
Yeah, when I heard of this, I thought of, it's another local Minneapolis company that we work with quite a bit. I think they do good work. He probably is getting good recognition already, but I'll still say it anyway. So a company called Pear, and then their founder is a guy named Eric Martel. So Eric and I met 7 years ago or so when I think him and a co-founder had this idea for Pear, and we met at a Lund's Byerly's at Ridgedale and started talking through this idea. And so they provide digital ad landing pages and sort of like SKU finder type work. So they're a good intermediary between offsite programmatic and a retailer's site. That's kind of their sweet spot. But they've done an amazing job scaling their business and growing that out over the last couple of years. And so shout out to Eric and his crew, and really supporting another local Minneapolis and a lot of Wisconsin folk type business.
I think you had Eric on one of your webinars not too long ago, right?
Yep. They do a lot of work with us in the alcohol space too. So good company, good people. I'd say we've been friendly together both ways as far as companies. And so happy to see both companies grow in this space over the last number of years.
Very good. I'll be sure to drop a link to that webinar along with your website and other things in the podcast. But what's the best way to get a hold of you?
LinkedIn. So that's, I'm on there quite a bit. My company is on there quite a bit. If you send me a message and you're not a random AI bot, I will write you back. Probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. And then we go from there.
There you go. Well, this was great. Really appreciate you taking the time to meet with us and be on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining the LiftKit Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, John Hoeft, founder of LiftKit Marketing, a consultancy dedicated to supporting agencies and marketers with their digital growth strategies.
And I'm the co-host, Danielle Schermerhorn, a former agency owner and current e-commerce specialist with deep experience across both brand and agency sides of the marketing world.
Each week, we'll bring you conversations with marketing professionals who are doing great work, whether they're leading teams, building campaigns, launching products, or just figuring it out behind the scenes.
Our guests will share their personal journeys, the real stories behind their success, the challenges they faced, and the wins they're most proud of. We'll also hear what's next for them and what they see on the horizon for the industry.
At LiftKit Marketing, we believe in celebrating people, recognizing great work, and lifting up those who are making an impact. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the episode.